Good afternoon. This is a Devar Torah dealing with Pesach and the Haggadah. And what I will be focusing on in this shir, in Devar Torah, is a famous Mechilta that's brought up in the Haggadah. It's discussing the number of plagues that occurred. Now, I'm going to quote the original source, and it's brought down in a number of places. It appears in the Sifra, the Mechilta Rav Shimon Ben Yochai, and which is nice, was Mechilta Rabbi Akiva. In any event, it raises very interesting questions. But let me read the source itself first, and it goes like this: Rabbi Yossi Galili Omer, Menayin ata Omer Shlocho Mitzrayim Esed Makos Niyam Lakol Chamishim Makos. And Rabbi Yossi Galili said, how can one show that following the 10 plagues in Egypt itself, the Egyptians were smitten with 50 plagues at the Red Sea? Because it said, Mitzrayim Mashahu Ma'omer, Shemru Charatutumim, El Pharaoh. There's astrologers, there's magicians, pharaohs, Esbelokimhu. And this is talking about, by the way, what is this talking about? It's talking about the third plague. And when they said that, when they couldn't replicate it like the first two, Al Hayam Mashahu Mer. And then they say, what do they say about the on the sea? The splitting of the sea. Yira Israel et Yad Hagadol Asher Asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim Ru Ha'am Adonai Imaminu Moshe Avdo Kama Be'etzbo Es Makos Omer Me'ata Mitzrayim Lako Eser Malkos Yam Lako Commission Malkos. And Israel saw the strong hand of Hashem which is shown against Egypt, and the people of Hashem believed in the servant as Moshe. If one finger of God is caused by 10 plagues, we assume from this that the whole hand of God at the Red Sea would be 50 plagues. Now, Rabbi Eliezer said, "Menayin shekol maka v'maka shehi b'kodesh baruch hu al Mitzrayim b'Mitzrayim. I saw shel arba makos shenamar, that each plague was really 4 plagues, because it says shenamar yishlach b'mcharon apo evrav v'azom v'sarab mishlachat malkei haraim." And he says, he takes a pasuk from Tehillim, Psalm 78, pasuk 49, and says that he sent against Egypt in his burning wrath, anger, wrath, indignation, trouble, message, evil. This to be interpreted, each plague was descended with wrath, 1, indignation, 2, trouble, 3, descending of messages of sending of messages, 4, of evil. Wrath, indignation, trouble, and sending a message of evil. So, if that was the case, and if that's the case, Arba'am, Omer Me'atam, Mitzrayim, Lako, Arba'im, Malkod, El Yam, Lako, Matayim. So that means each 10-fold plague, or 4-fold plagues, that's 40. But in the early interpretation, Red Sea, he suffered 200 plagues. And Rabbi Akiva gave us even more. Menayin shekol maka v'maka shehi kodesh baruch hu Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim haisar chamesh malkot Shenemar Ishlach B'Acharon Apo Evra Za'anim Sarah B'Mishlachat Malkei Ra'im Charon Apo Achad Evra Shtayim Za'im Shalosh Sarah Abba Mishlachat Malkei Ra'im Chamesh Amame Yatam Mitzrayim Laku Chamisha Mako and Aliyam Laku Chamishim Matayim Mako. So Rabbi Akiva said in a similar fashion, you can show that every plague which the Egyptian, Holy One, blessed be He, brought upon the Egyptians was fivefold in character. Interpreting the same verse, he was said, his burning anger is 1, wrath is 2, indignation 3, trouble 4, and the messenger of evil. Thus, if the Egyptians was struck with tenfold, which is 50, making 50, then they had 5 times that. The hand of Hashem, they suffered 250 plagues using the same source that we had above. Now, there is a number of questions on this. I'm going to ask 4 questions, which is really an appropriate number. And the number 4 appears quite often in the Agada. 4 sons, among other things. 4 questions, a lot of other things. Now, I'm going to ask, now, where is the conflict? First of all, there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that states there were 10 plagues in Egypt and 10 at the Yam Suf. So that's 20. So how do you get all these other opinions, which makes it very difficult? And particularly in the case of the quotation of Rabbi Akiva, who says 50 and 250, because the Stam Mishnah, which means the author is Rabbi Meir, and his Rebbe is Rabbi Akiva, states 20 plagues. So how can he get 50 plagues of Rabbi Akiva in Mitzrayim and 250 at the Yam Suf? And by the way, a sub-question I'm going to ask, what was the nature of the plagues that occurred at the Yam Suf? All 3 opinions in the Bryce agree 5 times as many plagues as the Yam Suf as in Mitzrayim. What is the reason for this? 4th, Rabbi Akiva says that each plague in Mitzrayim was actually 5, and Rabbi Eliezer says each was 4. What's the nature of the dispute? And it isn't just how you break up a verse in the Tehillim, Psalms, and the underlying significance. And finally, Rabbi Yossi Galili gets rid of all those multiples. He would agree with the Mishnah, at least in what happened in Mitzrayim. He keeps it to 10. Where does he disagree with both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer? Those are the questions. Now, Mishnah Pirkei Avos, again, chapter 5, Mishnah 5, says there's 10 plagues in Mitzrayim, and of course these are well known. If you look at the Agada, even in the most basic way, the plagues are listed there more than once. But nowhere does it mention in the Chumash the plagues at the Yam Suf. It talks about the Egyptians getting drowned, but it doesn't specifically say these are the 10 punishments. They're mentioned in 2 places, Mekilta Rabbi Ishmael, and also by Rabbeinu Yonah, a famous Rishon. And he said these are the special miracles or plagues. That although the sun rose so they're crossing the Yam Suf after the Jews had transversed the Yam Suf, the sea, the Egyptians were still kept in darkness by the clouds of glory. True, the cloud of glory turned the hard ground into clay. The pillar of fire which had guided Jews sent waves of heat to the Egyptians, causing the hooves of the horses to fall off. The heat burned off the wheels of the chariot, which kept going into the sea, miraculously. 5th month after the horses' hooves fell off, the Egyptians tumbled in the mud and could not get up. When the waters flowed back towards the Egyptians, after the sea had split, early in the night, they could not escape because in every direction they warm water confronted them, which of course is a miracle going against heaven itself. 7, the Egyptians were tossed into the sea. by Hashem, as they sank the lower depths sent them back to the upper depths, which meant to the lower life. So many Egyptians were covered by mud at the bottom of the sea. The ninth one is, depending on the decree of evil, some Egyptians sank like lead and died quickly, and others died slowly and more painfully. And finally, 10, all the bodies of the Egyptians were ejected by the Yam Suf, so that Bnei Israel could see that their enemies had been destroyed, were clearly dead. Now, there were 5 times the number of plagues in a lower location than Mitzrayim. And therefore, it's a common and greater revelation of Hashem's power and glory as compared to Mitzrayim. Now, we quoted the Besukim that Rabbi Yossi clearly had quoted. Now, some things we have to understand to come up with an answer by this. The transversing of the Yam Suf took place on the 7th day of Pesach, which is now 7th day of Pesach, 7 days from their leaving. And we know that every period of the year has a different atmosphere. Elos, we get close to Hashem. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, days of judgment, Sukkot, the celebration. And in various times of the year, we have different good, some sad, not some happy, some in the middle. And this day became the 7th day, and it's imbued with special qualities. So when we're looking at, so literally on the night of the Haggadah, the first night of Pesach, we got to relive the Exodus of Egypt. And we have to, 7th day, Hashem also gave it special qualities. These are 2 days of the year which reflect Hashem's open intervention in the world with miracles and wonders, namely the 21st day of Nisan and the 21st day of Tishrei. That's the 7th day of Pesach and the 7th day of Sukkot. Now, why both? The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah 12b says there's a dispute between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua whether the world was created on the 25th of Elul, which man was created on the 1st of Tishrei, Scottish Tishrei, or was the world created on the 25th of Adar, with man being created on the 1st of Nisan. Now, 21st of Nisan is 21 days after the creation of man and 26 days after the creation of the world. That represents 2 numbers. The same with Tishrei. 21st Tishrei is 21 days, 26 days after the creation of the world, 21 days after the creation of man. Now, as Rabbeinu Bach explains in his book, now he's talking about Kara Kema. He's talking about Sukkot, but he said it's the same for Pesach, Nisan, and Pesach. Now, Shem has different names. The name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Gematria 26, and that's Hashem's power over the universe. With that name, he created the universe. And Yud-Kei Vav, which is Gematria 21, represents Hashem's mastery over mankind's destiny for history. Applying the above explanation to the 7th day of Pesach, it's a day of the open revelation of Hashem to the world of man through the use of nature, that duality. Since that day is a revelation of Hashem to the entire world, it follows there'd be many more plagues against the Egyptians and greater miracles to the Jewish people than in Mitzrayim. Because the punishment, and I'll add something here, the punishment in Mitzrayim was punishment against one nation, Egypt. And the miracles later on were a display for the whole world. What happened at the Yom Suf. Also, as we see, when there'll be the ultimate redemption, it will dwarf the events of Egypt and the Yom Suf, because this time all 70 nations will be punished for oppressing us, not just one. And on another level, why does God manifest these two? Because it's seen when Moshe first went to Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go," he says, "I do not recognize Yud K Vav K, denying Hashem has created the universe. No, I will not let the people go." In other words, referring to Hashem as the master of mankind, control of mankind, wouldn't do it. So therefore, Hashem sent plagues that manifested both of these aspects. Now, how do we reconcile these huge number of plagues, 10, 40, and 50 in Mitzrayim, and 50, 200, and 250 at Egypt? And there's a number of explanations about the nature of these plagues. I'm going to give one here. This is brought by the Maharal of Prague, and the Yad Mitzrayim Agada, written by Rabbi Yitzhak Isaac Chava, who was a Talmud of the Gra. They explain that these plagues represent the four. This is Rav Eliezer, represent the four spiritual elements with which Hashem created the universe, namely Afar, earth, Aish, fire, these are spiritual, Mayim, water, and Ruach, air. That's the four spiritual elements. That's Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Akiva extends that by one, because he says there's a fifth underlying unifying force called helio. That's Ramban's term. Nachmanides, it's borrowed, I believe, from the Greek language. Therefore, each one of these numerous plagues represents one of these five spiritual elements. In the case of Rabbi Akiva, it was not just enough to do the surface ones. The Pharaoh was also denying the intrinsic fact that all of the universe was created by Hashem. So these 10 plagues mentioned in Pirkei Avos, the Klali plagues, and the 10 plagues mentioned in Pirkei Avos, and the other plagues are their subcomponents, different aspects on different levels. Now, on a deeper level, the true dispute is whether Hashem is responding to Pharaoh by sending plagues regarding the four spiritual elements described above, or as Rabbi Akiva said, the five. Pharaoh, as I explained, now, and because Pharaoh would also deny the underlying unity of the universe through Hashem. Now, why doesn't Rav Yossi Galili use this pasuk? And I give one possible explanation, because Rav Yossi is holding this Hashem's main purpose in Mitzrayim is to demonstrate his control of nature and to liberate the Jewish people. Now, all the first 9 plagues, people might try explaining away, though the 9th one, plague of darkness and even hail, where you had fire and water going together, would be hard to. The 10th plague, where only the firstborn were killed, there is no natural explanation for that. And the plagues at the Yam Suf, the primary goal was demonstrating the world that Hashem controls history and the affairs of mankind through nature. Now, so Rabbi Akiva and Eliezer disagree with the interpretation of the plagues in Mitzrayim. They emphasize the aspect of the punishment of Pharaoh and the Egyptians' denial of Hashem's creation of the universe, even at weakening the demonstration of Hashem's power over man. At the Yam Suf, we're going to, in other words, there where his main thing is controlling man, they're willing to forego that and show that even Egypt, where he isn't. Now, I would like to give a blessing that as we get deeper and deeper into the Haggadah, that we will get new insights. Remember, it's a day when one day we do not have the Yetzer Hara. Yes, one day, no Yetzer Hara. And over the next 49 days, which we'll be speaking about another Devar Torah, where the time of counting Sfiras Omer, we have to work our way up to receiving the Torah 49 days later. And everyone here should have a meaningful Seder. And I will also be doing a further share on other Inyanim and Torah, on other Inyanim topics in Pesach.